Coastal North, and I am a regional long-term care ombudsman covering Forsyth and Yadkin County. This presentation is supported by the Ombudsman team here at Piedmont Triad Regional Council, Area Agency on Aging. Our Ombudsman team are continuously trying to promote awareness around residents' rights issues and those affecting residents in long-term care. An ombudsman assists residents in understanding their rights and advocating for their care and mediating issues and ongoing concerns within facilities. Today, we're going to focus on common frauds and scams that affect older and disabled adults, prevention strategies, and resources for reporting exploitation. Our presentation will have two speakers today, and we're going to leave a little time in between them for question and answers, and then additional Q&A time at the end. We ask that you share your comments and questions in the chat box, and then we will review them when the time comes. So let's welcome our speakers today. First, we have Sarah Welsh, who is an outreach specialist for the North Carolina Department of Justice. In her position, she travels around the state raising awareness and educating North Carolinians on financial fraud, crime prevention, and resources for crime victims. She also helps develop policy to protect the state from various threats. Sarah has a bachelor's degree in political science and Spanish from James Madison University in Virginia and a master's degree in international studies from the Universidad de Salamanca in Spain. Sarah is a native North Carolinian, and she calls Raleigh home. In her spare time, she enjoys gardening and making pottery. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Crystal.
Later,
everybody.
Well, yes. Later, we're going to hear from Mandy Jackson. Mandy has been at the Forsyth County Adult Protective Services as a social worker for the last 11 years and with the Forsyth County Department of Social Services in total for over 23 years. Although they see a lot of different things with the APS, today she's going to focus on exploitation within the typical population. Mandy has a husband and two active teenagers, and she has been a leader in her daughter's troop for several years. She and her family love camping and going to new places. So, Sarah, if you would like to share your screen, we'll go ahead and get started.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. My presentation is going to talk about how we can best avoid scams and frauds, whether they're via text, on phone, or online. I will share some resources from the North Carolina Department of Justice, and then again, you'll have time for questions at the end of my presentation. So if there's anything I don't cover, feel free to ask. To give an overview, I'll talk a little bit about what the Department of Justice does, what our mission is, specifically what our Consumer Protection Division does, and then how to best avoid common scams via phone, text, and online. I know many of you are professionals working with older adults, and so maybe this will be helpful for recognizing some red flags, common scams, tactics, and just some things that should pique your sensors when you start hearing things or noticing things, and then just some other further prevention tips. And again, there'll be time for questions and any stories you want to share at the end as well. So the Department of Justice is led by the Attorney General. As of January, we have a new Attorney General, Jeff Jackson. The Attorney General is the top lawyer and the top law enforcement officer in the state. And so he will serve a term of 4 years. The Department of Justice's mission is to prevent crime and support law enforcement, safeguard consumers, and to defend the state, its state agencies, its natural resources, and then the people who live here and their constitutional rights. And so we're going to focus on all three of those today, which is they're all involved in our work to prevent scams and frauds and people being taken advantage of. So our Consumer Protection Division is one of our largest divisions at the Department of Justice. We do a variety of things. One of them that you may have heard about is the consumer complaint process. So if you or someone you know were to have an experience with a business where you feel like you're being taken advantage of, or an organization, then you can submit a complaint to the Consumer Protection Division. They review those complaints and then they take legal action where possible. Oftentimes those scammers are not in North Carolina, they're not even in the country, so it's really hard for them to fall within our jurisdiction, but sometimes it does happen, and so we do try to take legal action where we can. The other thing that we do is we respond to reports from businesses and state and local governments about security breaches. 2024 was a record year for security breaches in North Carolina. There were more than 2,000 complaints, and a record number of people were impacted by security breaches as well. So this is a major issue, and so we'll talk more in this presentation too about how to best protect our financial and personal information. And then the last thing that I'll talk about that our Consumer Protection Division does is that we get to educate North Carolinians. We do this a couple of different ways. One of them is through presentations like today, and another is through consumer alerts. So every so often we will release consumer alerts when there's something that folks need to be aware of. Earlier last year, like about a year ago, there was lead being found in applesauce. We sent out a consumer alert saying, be careful if you've purchased these different brands of applesauce, they might be contaminated, and how to respond. And then also for noticing trends and scams, then we'll send out a consumer alert. And that's something that you can sign up for and get those sent to your email. So you can share those with your communities as well. A little bit more about our Consumer Protection Division. Last year, we received more than 19,000 consumer complaints, and we won back more than $84 million in court judgments and settlements. Under the last administration, which was under Attorney General Josh Stein, we won back more than $3 billion for consumers. Those were in court judgments and settlements against opioid manufacturers and distributors, against Juul, which is a vaping manufacturer, and as well as other litigation against other companies. And then the other thing that I'll point out from this is I know if you're working with older adults, you know that robocalls and spam phone calls are a major issue. Their phones are always ringing. And so we're working hard to try and prevent those phone calls from reaching folks. And one of the ways that we do that is through the Robocall Report Task Force. So this is a task force made up of 50 attorneys general from around the country, as well as the telecommunications companies. So T-Mobile, Sprint, Verizon, AT&T are part of this task force. And those companies have agreed to certain principles that they will adhere to in practicing business to prevent robocalls from reaching consumers. One of the things that this task force has resulted in is that warning on phones that comes up. So if you get an incoming phone call and it says, spam risk or potential spam, that's a result of this task force as well. And so they're trying to prevent those phone calls from reaching folks, but in the event that they do, they give them a warning that, hey, there's a risk associated with answering this phone call. This is a breakdown of the top consumer complaints from last year. You'll notice the largest chunk, 20%, were about robocalls. So we are well aware that this is a major issue, and we do ask that people report them to our office so we can continue to work with the telecommunications companies on improving their practices. Other major issues that folks report to us, motor vehicle sales, that could be issues with titles, it could be issues with cars that are lemons that are being sold to them. And then other ones, credit companies, utility companies, home improvement scams, especially after major natural disasters, we'll get complaints about folks who were experiencing somebody, knocking on their door to fix their home, their roof or something after a natural disaster. And then they ask for payment up front and then they never come back. That's a major issue that folks deal with. Other ones, internet landlord-tenant issues, insurance, professional services. So that's kind of a bucket for any services that you could hire or contract somebody for, and then land and real estate complaints as well. All right, so let's dive into how can we best avoid common scams. First, I'll start with what is a scam? My grandma once told me pedicures are a scam. And I was like, no, grandma, pedicures are not a scam. Scams require that somebody's being dishonest to you. So it means that somebody is trying to get something of value from you by being deceitful. And so it could be that they are trying to get money from you. It could be that they're trying to get personal information that's valuable. They're trying to get property. So anything of value. And then who's susceptible to scams? Unfortunately, everybody is. It doesn't matter how old you are, how well educated you are, your race or your gender. Scammers are looking for everybody. We do know that scammers prey upon people differently based off of different factors. So the way that a scammer may try to target me would be different than maybe somebody who's older or somebody who lives in a different geographic area too. But the bottom line is that everybody's susceptible, so we all have to take preventative measures. Last year, these were our top 5 most reported scams. So number 1 are the sweepstakes lottery scams. That's when somebody gets a phone call or a letter in the mail that's saying, congratulations, you've won a brand new car. You just have to pay the delivery fees or the taxes, and then it'll be delivered to you. Anytime somebody has to pay money upfront for a bigger payout down the road, it's a scam. The next most common one are imposter scams. This is an umbrella term for any type of scam that somebody is saying they are somebody that they're not, and they're trying to get something from you. So, for example, when somebody says, gets a text message that says your bank account's being frozen, for suspicious activity, click this link to, stop it from being frozen. When somebody says, gets a text message saying that you owe a lot of toll money, even though you don't live anywhere near tolls or toll roads. And that's an imposter scam. Somebody getting a phone call saying that, you've missed jury duty and we're coming to arrest you. That's also an imposter scam. The third one, romance or friendship scams. These have become way more common ever since the COVID pandemic. This is a long scam that develops over weeks and months, and unfortunately really does prey upon older folks, especially people who are lonely and who are looking for relationship. And these develop oftentimes from social media, from text messages, from dating apps where somebody makes a connection with somebody, and then over weeks, they develop that relationship until it gets to a point where they feel comfortable asking that person for a large sum of money. And by that time, their victim is invested in that relationship and is willing to send them money. So this is a major issue and oftentimes results in large amounts of loss. The fourth one is tech support. These are, your typical, something pops up on your computer saying, we've detected a virus or something's wrong with your computer, and call this number, click this link to resolve the issue. And then the last one is a grandparent scam. And these are those scams you've probably seen about on the news where folks will receive a phone call that sounds like a loved one on the other end of the line, but really it's artificial intelligence mimicking the sound of their loved one's voice. So you don't have to be a grandparent for this to happen to you. It could be really anybody in your family who it sounds like. And again, they're going to try and tell you that something's wrong, that you need to act quickly, and that you need to send money. So in all of these, you'll notice there's a trend. Scammers are preying upon our emotions. They try to get us into a heightened state of fear or excitement, so much so that you're not thinking straight and that you can't respond in a logical way. And that's their goal, is to get us worked up. All right, so how can we stop them? How can we stop these scammers from hacking into our emotions and getting money from us? The first thing is to just slow down when we receive information. So if we're receiving a phone call, a text message, an email, slow down and don't answer. If there's one thing that I could, convince folks to do, it'd be to just let their voicemail do its job. Let those phone calls that you don't know who they're coming from just roll over to voicemail. And if they do leave a message and it's someone that really is trying to get a hold of you, then call them back. The thing about answering phone calls from unknown numbers is that every time somebody answers the phone from an unknown number and it's a scam call, those scammers will keep calling back. They'll call back from different numbers because they know this is a real phone that's being used by somebody who's willing to answer. So we're going to keep calls. So really encourage the folks that you work with to not answer those phone calls. The other thing to encourage them to do is to save their contacts in their phone. Oftentimes we hear from seniors that they don't save their family members' phone numbers, and that's really a problem, especially with spoofing. And so that's when, if you look at caller ID, it says that it's calling from a number, usually from the same area code as you. Sometimes it's even your own phone number. And what those scammers are doing is that they are spoofing, they're using a computer technology to mimic a phone number. And so encourage people that you work with to save their contacts' phone numbers so that if their loved one does call them, or if their pharmacy or their doctor's office does call them, it shows up as their name. And then the other thing, if they do answer the phone, encourage them to hang up if it's not who they think it is. So if they're expecting a phone call from their doctor's office, but they answer the phone and it's not their doctor's office, tell them to hang up, that they don't need to be on long phone call conversations with somebody who's just spinning a story for them. So avoid answering the phone in the first place, and then hang up if it's not who they think it is. And then under no circumstance should they ever be giving out personal information over the phone. All right. The next thing that I would encourage folks to do is to sign up for the Do Not Call registry. This is a nationwide registry. You only have to register one time, and you put your phone number in, and then it puts you on a list of numbers that should not be giving robocalls. The thing about this, though, is that it is not foolproof. And so companies will still abuse the Do Not Call registry. They will still call phone numbers on it, but it does cut down on the number of phone calls that folks will get. So signing up for the Do Not Call registry is important, and not answering phone calls when they get those spam phone numbers calling them, because again, that just encourages the scammers to call back if they do answer. And then the last part about phone scams is to report any of those robocalls to us. This helps us stay on top of our telecommunications companies. And so if you or someone that you're working with is getting a bunch of these, you can report them to our office. And so you can do that online at our website, or you can do that by calling 1-844-8-NO-ROBO. All right, moving on to text scams. Similar to phone scams, the best thing to do is to not respond. So if someone gets a phone text or a text on their phone saying something along the lines of, your bank account's being frozen because of suspicious activity, click this link, to log into your account or whatever. The best thing to do is not respond. Don't click on the links. Don't send stop. Don't try and call that number. Just go ahead and encourage them to delete the message. If they are concerned, that their bank account is being frozen, tell them to always go back to a verified source of information. So for your bank, your phone number for your bank is on the back of your debit or credit card, and encourage them to call that number. But don't just assume that the information that's coming to them via text message or that's coming to them via phone call is accurate. So really important not to respond to those messages, because again, just like with phone calls, they will keep sending messages from other phone numbers trying to craft a scam that will hook them into falling for it. If you're using a smartphone, then you can, underneath a new message from an unknown number, it'll say, unknown sender, report to junk. And that's great. It'll go right back to the telecommunications company. You click that small font. It'll say, are you sure? You click yes. And then it goes back to your telecommunication provider. The other thing that you can do is you can copy and paste that message and send it to 7726. And it goes again back to the telecommunications companies so that they can work on preventing those messages from getting through their servers. Moving on to email. people get lots of scam emails. One of the most successful is actually from Best Buy's Geek Squad, or supposedly Best Buy's Geek Squad. And they get lots of money from people every year trying to convince them that they have signed up for a Geek Squad renewal subscription, and that they're going to charge them a bunch of money and that they need to call this number to cancel their subscription. And what they end up doing is giving away their bank account information at some point in the conversation. With any of these email scams, it's really important that you're looking for clues. So who is the email coming from? If the email's address is a whole bunch of numbers and letters from @gmail.com, but the body of the message says that it's coming from a reputable organization, it's not. If emails are coming in the middle of the night, that's also not a reputable organization. If they're giving you phone numbers or links, don't click on them. Don't just assume that they're correct. So it's important that you double check that information by, Google searching, Best Buy Geek Squad's phone number and what comes up online. And then if there's any grammar or spelling mistakes in those emails, again, red flag that it's not a reputable organization communicating with you. The other thing to be watching out for is that oftentimes seniors will give away a lot of information that can then be used by scammers through their social media accounts. This is also how scammers will start those long scams for romance and friendship scams by preying upon their relationships with, affinity groups. If they're a veteran and they want to prey upon their association with the military, or if they want to, connect with them and they say that, oh, we went to the same high school, or, oh, we have, a mutual friend or something, they'll try and create this connection to that person. And so it is super important that folks have their social media accounts set to private so that their only friends are those that they approve and that they know in real life. Similar online shopping ads can be manipulated. So if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. This is an example of a Lego ad on Facebook. It's not actually Lego. You'll see that the website goes to brickmartfun.cc. That's not lego.com. So you can encourage the seniors that you're working with to not click on ads. Usually they look really compelling. The best thing to do, though, is to go to their internet browser and type in the company's name. So type in lego.com and then go to their website to see if the sale is real. So again, things look too good to be true. They probably are. And so just having that overall skepticism is really important when being online. All right, some further prevention tips. These are really on the side of preventative measures. So trying to keep bad actors from having access to our seniors, and they go a long way. First thing, making sure that we practice good cyber hygiene. So that means making sure our software is up to date, making sure that it's as strong as possible against hackers, installing anti-malware on devices, making sure that our internet servers and our data systems are protected from being hacked, encouraging folks to use strong passwords, which are easy to remember but hard to hack, and then clearing our cache, which is clearing out cookies, making sure that we're not allowing companies to track our information so that can be used against us. Again, reiterating, not clicking on links or opening attachments from unverified sources, making sure that our privacy settings are set so that we are limiting our engagement with other actors that we don't know or don't trust. And then utilizing multi-factor authentication, which is using that one-time passcode to log into our most important accounts. To go over, what is a strong password? Password 123, not a strong password, right? Oftentimes websites won't even allow something this simple or short anymore. Encourage your seniors to use passwords that are phrases or sentences. So Bible verses, song lyrics, mottos that they say to themselves all make great passwords. And then encourage them to, add a couple of capital letters, In this example, we've swapped out E for 3 and then added an exclamation point at the end. So encourage them to get creative, and then of course always write it down. My grandpa always says, a dull pencil remembers more than a sharp mind. So keeping a list of passwords somewhere safe that other people don't have access to it is a good way to make sure that you can remember it too when you need to log in. Some other everyday prevention tips. The first one says to perform a wallet audit, which is to go through your wallet and make sure that you're not carrying around unnecessary information with you, right? Like social security card doesn't need to be in your wallet, your passport doesn't need to be in your wallet. And this goes further too, for folks who are living in residential facilities, making sure that their most important information is secured and not accessible to staff members who may have ulterior intentions. And then also encouraging folks to shred documents. So I know lots of times senior centers and different community centers will have shredders available, or they'll help shred-a-thons where people can access them, and encourage folks to take their documents that they no longer need to go and be shredded so that they're not available to be taken advantage of. Also making sure that folks collect mail regularly. This is more so an issue with folks who are living independently, and we oftentimes get reports of just people, tampering with mail and trying to commit mail fraud. The last few, watch out for skimming. If folks are not driving anymore, then this is less of a concern, but skimming is when someone puts a piece of technology on top of a card reader. So usually it's at ATMs or at gas stations where you insert your card, and then it passes through an additional piece of technology that's been placed there by a bad actor, and then takes that information and sends it to them somewhere else. Again, this is more so an issue for folks who are more independent, who are still utilizing gas stations or ATMs, places that are less monitored and less secure. And then the last two, I think, are just good pieces of advice in general. If folks come to you, and they say, I don't know about this message, or I don't know about this email, if they already have a sense of doubt about it, encourage them to listen to that gut reaction. Encourage folks to come to you with questions, making sure that there's an open dialogue around these sorts of scams and fraud. Simply because if someone comes to you and says, I think I've done this, or I think I'm talking to somebody who I think might be trying to take advantage of me. And if they get shut down, or told, oh, how could you be so stupid? Or how could you be so silly? Whether it's by a staff member or a family member, that encourages that person to not report. And oftentimes, too often, people don't report when they're being scammed because of embarrassment or feelings of humiliation. So encourage people to come to you with these kinds of issues so that hopefully they will not lose any money to these folks. The last few pieces here are about payment prevention tips. In general, credit cards are more secure than debit cards. And then if you hear of anybody saying that they have to go out and buy, gift cards or use a Bitcoin ATM or, wire money to somebody that they don't know, that is a major red flag for their being scammed. So it's a point to intervene and encourage somebody to stop and have a conversation. All right, the last pieces of prevention are really the most critical, I think. Well, there's a few words missing on this slide. You should encourage folks that you're working with to get credit reports. So you can get free credit reports from the major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And you should review those credit reports for inaccuracies. That's the missing word here. You can request them regularly. Since COVID. They now allow you to request them, I believe, as often as once a week online. And so it should be really easy to read. You should see, if someone has a mortgage, a car payment, a credit card, all of those should be listed. If there's anything that they don't recognize, then they need to report that to the credit bureau. And then the last thing that the credit bureaus offer that's really helpful, especially when we're talking about, an increase in data breaches, is they provide credit security freezes. So if the folks that you're working with, are not in need of credit, they're not, going to be applying for a new car loan or a new mortgage or a new credit card anytime soon, then encourage them or their family members to get them a credit security freeze, which freezes their credit. So they can continue to use their credit card, but it prevents anybody from being able to open any new lines of credit. So this means that, for example, somebody can't go into, a bank and with their information that they've stolen from a data breach and request a new line of credit in their name. So what they have to do is they have to contact all three major credit bureaus. They cannot just contact one, they have to contact all three. And they'll create an account with them, and then they set up a credit security freeze. It's completely free. These credit agencies may say, oh, for $25.99, you can, upgrade to, premium or whatever. They're upselling. This service is totally free. And then it's also permanent. So it can be paused if, for example, somebody decides, oh, I do need, a new credit card. They can pause it for a period of time, apply for that credit card, get approved, and then the credit freeze goes back into place. So again, this is a really great tool that prevents people from having their credit stolen. And then if somebody were to have their credit stolen, an excellent resource comes from the Federal Trade Commission. Their website, identitytheft.gov, is an excellent resource that walks folks through exactly what they need to do to recover their identity. Whether or not they need to file a police report, whether or not they need to contact the Social Security Administration. They think through everything so that you don't have to. So I really recommend this resource from the FTC. And then the last few things that I'll leave you with are from the North Carolina Department of Justice. You can go to our website, ncdoj.gov, and in the top left corner, you can file a consumer complaint. In the top right corner with the big red button, you can report a robocall or text. It also lists our phone numbers. This 8775 no scam number is if you want to talk to a member of our consumer protection division, and you can talk to a real person. Someone will answer the phone. On our website, you can also sign up for consumer alert newsletters. Those are if you want to be up to date about, what are the scams that we're seeing right now. And then the last that I'll mention too is that, especially for folks working in Medicaid funded facilities, you can contact our Medicaid Investigations Division if you have any suspicions of fraud or abuse happening in those Medicaid funded facilities. That's something that our office is responsible for investigating. Even if the person that you're talking, to who might be being financially abused, or physically abused or neglected, even if they're not paying with Medicaid funds, but the facility receives Medicaid funds, then you would still report that to our office. All right, I'll stop there and leave time for questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Sarah. That was a lot of information. I haven't had any questions come in the chat box, so I'm going to let people kind of process and think of maybe some questions or scenarios they'd like. We have probably about 9 minutes to go over some question and answer before Mandy starts her portion of the presentation. So while people are thinking up their great questions, I'll hit you with a few things. By the way, first of all, I didn't know there was a Bitcoin ATM. That's a new thing I learned today. I have a question. So when we're talking about the romance scam, that's the one I've seen personally affect older adults in my family the most, because they were still living at home by themselves and got very deep into them before someone found out. Are there like bookmarks or some type of marketing material that kind of has the hallmark, like 3 or 4 things to look for? Because I feel like in my situation, for the people I know, uh, like you said, they were very afraid of admitting or talking. So it's like maybe there's some more official source that we could give them, and then they can kind of venture towards that, versus maybe me as a person telling them, hey, that sounds like a romance scam. Hey, I'd love for you to have this form and you can look at it or use it as you see fit. Are there
Yeah,
things like that out there?
definitely. I see Anne just put in the chat resources from the FTC. I'm also going to send from the Department of Justice. We have a senior scam guide. It was last updated in 2023. We're updating it right now, but the content is like very evergreen. So it goes through the most common scams that we see with some example stories, and it would be a good opportunity for conversation starter. So if you want to sit down with folks and say, these are, some of the common scams, what does it bring to mind for you? And those sorts of things, because um, I was recently on a call with the FTC where they were talking about with these romance scams, especially for older adults who are lonely. They contact them so frequently, up to, 18 to 20 times a day, that family members really can't compete with that if they have full-time jobs and are, talking with them once a week. These scammers are communicating with them so frequently that it's really hard to intervene. So it's really important to point out, the flaws or the red flags in that relationship, to try and intervene as soon as possible.
That's great. I'm glad that that's exactly what I'm looking for. I look forward to going to some of the publications. Okay, Michelle Ellis asked, she saw that there was a scam related to QR codes where scammers are putting scamming QR code stickers on top of true ones so that they can obtain banking or credit card information, especially at pay for parking lots like the city governments are using a lot now. Is that true? Have you seen that?
I've also seen reports of that in the news. Yeah, I think one of the ways you can avoid that is oftentimes they'll link a URL as well that you can
To
type
type
into your
the
browser.
website.
Mhm.
Okay.
Or if they have an app that they list as well, then that would be something to avoid having the
Download
scan.
the app. Okay. What about, does the robocall work on cell phone numbers?
Yes, yep. So you can put in home phone numbers, work phone numbers, cell phone numbers, and you can add all of those to the do not call registry.
I've heard people say in the past, though, they've put their number on that registry and they still get calls. Is that because they can get around it still sometimes? Scammers can?
Yeah, I mean, not everybody plays by the rules. And so sometimes the do not call registry is not effective. So that's why we say, sign up for the do not call registry, because it will cut down on the number of calls you get, but to also make sure that you're really diligent about not answering the phone when you get an unknown number calling you.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think that's one of the big ones now. People know that we have the way our phones tell us it could be a scam, or we know that it's not a number we've plugged into our phone, is really helpful. They're saying, wait and listen to the voicemail. Let's see, we haven't gotten any more. Feel free to send your questions. We have still about 5 more minutes that you guys can send in your questions to Sarah. Um, I had a question about the 84 million you said that you all recovered, the Department of Justice recovered in judgment and settlements. How are those funds used?
That's a great question. It depends on each different settlement. So, for example, we recently announced a new settlement last month against Purdue Pharma for the opioid manufacturing and distribution. And those, it's like $1.6 billion is coming back to North Carolina, and $1.3 billion will go back to like local communities, so counties, municipalities, and that will be distributed through the Department of Health and Human Services and their county commissions for mitigating and preventing opioid addiction, and also treating people with opioid addiction. So
Okay,
that's
so it
just one
is
example.
earmarked specific. Okay.
Mhm.
Do and with that, do with any of these settlements, do older adults that have been a victim of these scams, do they ever recuperate their funds from these settlements?
Sometimes. So, there have been cases of people who have lost money to scammers, and that money, if those scammers are able to be um, prosecuted, then sometimes they do get that money back. If folks have been taken advantage of by, a business, for example, after Hurricane Helene, we had a case where we were prosecuting a company for price gouging, for tree removal. And those sorts of cases also get litigated, and that money is, recovered for those consumers as well.
That's good to know. I mean, there's a chance you can recover some of those funds. Kim was asking, could you explain more about when facilities or other entities except Medicaid would if they made the report to ID? What
Yeah.
happens? What's the process?
That's a good question. So I'll put a link directly to that part of our website too. So you would submit a complaint to our Medicaid Investigations Division, and then they would investigate that complaint. And so they would, contact you if they would contact you regardless of what they find. But it investigates fraud in Medicaid funded facilities by healthcare providers and suppliers. It also they investigate physical abuse of patients paying with Medicaid, or again, any patient in a Medicaid funded facility. And then any stealing or improper use of patients' funds in a Medicaid funded facility. So if you want to make a report, then that link has the phone number for their office, and also a link for an online complaint form that you can use as well.
I'm curious if the facility accepts Medicaid, but the person under investigation or some of the persons under investigation are not technically Medicaid residents, but the facility as a whole accepts Medicaid, will it still be investigated?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. That's good to know. Okay. Well, Sarah, it looks like we have kind of a slow coming in with the question. So I think maybe we'll move on to Mandy, and maybe at the end we'll still have some time for both of you to answer questions. But I appreciate you sharing all this great information today.
My pleasure. I'm gonna put my email in the chat if anyone else has any questions that they want to send to me directly too.
Yes, this for the senior centers that are online. Sarah comes out to do presentations at your facility. So, all right, Mandy,
Well,
are
hi,
you
and thank
ready?
y'all. Yes. I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Sarah said a little bit, just because it's important information. And it's stuff that when we're going out and educating people, we stress as well, that trust your gut. That's what I tell people a whole lot of times. If something just doesn't feel right, trust it. Talk to somebody, ask somebody. Um, Most of the ways that we can help prevent fraud and scams is education, educating the population. If you see your friend, struggling with something, say something. If that person who's in the middle of that scam doesn't quite understand what's going on, well, maybe they're close to somebody that can recognize it and help, who has the education and stuff. Um, One thing that I will say about the romance scams, some people think that this people are actually going onto dating apps and sites and stuff. That's not always the case. Sometimes you can have your social media locked down and you make a comment on one of your friends' page, and then all of a sudden you get this strange friend request from somebody you don't know saying, "Hey, I noticed your comment. I really like the way what you said. I'd be interested in talking with you." So these friend requests can actually come out of the blue, even though you've done everything you can, supposedly, to prevent from letting other people see your social media profiles and whatnot. Um, and some of these romance scams, as she says, it's a long term game. We've had a couple that the person communicated up to a year before they asked for something. They had the person talk with family members and talked with other people, and really got the person believing that this was a real thing. So yes, they are invested in these relationships, and it is definitely a long-term gain for them. There's one type of scam that Sarah did not mention directly, and it's kind of what I call a helper scam. Um, these are friends, family, anybody that comes around and starts gaining a really close relationship with the individual. Hey, I'll run to the store for you, or I'll do this. And then just kind of gains that trust. Um, a lot of our people, individuals, they are not able to get out to the stores. They're not able to go run errands as easily due to physical limitations and other things. They'll easily hand over their debit card, their EBT card, anything like that, and it becomes problematic. The one thing we say is check your statements. Check your statements. It is not unlikely that people will go to the debit card or go to the ATM machine, let me say, and pull out $100 that you requested. You got that receipt, and then pull out a couple other $100, throw away that receipt you know nothing about. They come back, they give you your $100 and the receipt. You look at it, only $100 was taken out. You think everything's okay because you didn't check your receipts. You don't know that they also took $300 out after that. Same thing with running to the grocery stores. You know, you run to the grocery stores, you pick up a few items, you get that receipt, you bring it back and hand it over. What you're not checking or seeing is that right after that purchase, there was another purchase for a whole buggy full. That was our friend came up there and filled up their buggy and stuff. And, they kind of took advantage of that. So check those statements. I had one lady that had $500 coming out of her account each month because she didn't realize she accidentally signed up for an ongoing um, debit disbursements. She donated some money to a worthy charity that she thought, wrote a check, sent it off, and in the fine print was a after this check is cashed type of thing, we will continue to take this much amount out of your bank each month. And it was automatic. She's just assuming anything that's automatically being drafted out was legitimate stuff, not realizing, what all the codes and numbers were. And she was getting magazines right and left that she's never ordered and, all that stuff. Thankfully, we were able to go to the bank and sit down with one of the banking representatives, and they were able to put a stop to all those automatic transactions that were um, being done without her full knowledge. She fell into a trap and had those things coming out. As far as adult protective services, I'm going to just give you a little snippet of the population we serve. It is adults over the age of 18, but it is individuals who have some sort of incapacity or disability, and that incapacity or disability actually prevents them from meeting a certain need. And we say that because you can be disabled, receive a disability check, but not necessarily meet our definition of disability or incapacity because you figured a way to work around that or work with that disability and are making things um, work out for you each month. There's plenty of people out there who are born with disabilities, being blind, being deaf, and they have learned to overcome it. That would not necessarily automatically make them part of our population unless that disability directly inhibits something that is of concern or not being met. Um, the there's three things that we have to meet before we can go out and do any type of assessments. It's that one, they meet the definition of disability, incapacitation. Two, there's allegations of current maltreatment, something that is currently going on. This person used to be able to make their bills every single month. Now all of a sudden their bank account's empty before they even get their bills and they don't understand what's going on. Well, something's going on currently that is affecting this person. If something happened 6 months ago, the nephew came in, stole the money, you changed the accounts, it's all done. That's not anything current that we would look at. Call the police, let them do their investigation, and let them take it from there. Okay. We do not prosecute. The police do all that stuff. What we do is we do an assessment on what is the current situation. And that is our third piece, is that there has to be an ongoing need of protection in order for us to be able to step in and try to help that person. Again, if the bank has already stopped the account, stopped the debit card, changed the accounts, and dealt with the situation, there's not necessarily an ongoing need. It was dealt with, things were put in place as protection, that is great. Again, call the police, let them do their investigation on the exploitation of the fraud, and they can handle that from there. So we're kind of like a triage. We kind of identify and assess the problem, assess the situation. Why is the money being taken out of the account? What's going on? Oh, well, now we're helping you look at your bank statements and we see, you have some miscellaneous debits that you did not know about, miscellaneous grocery store purchases you didn't know about. And then we take that information and move forward with it. Now, whenever we find exploitation, we do report that over to the police, again, because we do not prosecute. What we do is we identify that and we say, yes, this is exploitation. You're being taken advantage of. And then what's the ongoing need? Again, if it's something simple that the person can say, well, hey, take this stuff off or block these transactions, or let's cancel my card and get another one, then that kind of usually helps with that. Now if a person needs a payee or some other sort of assistance, we can link them up with financial pathways. We can talk to them about how they can get a payee. The doctors would fill out certain information and send that to Social Security. If somebody has a payee and the payee is not meeting their needs and not doing what they need to do, you can go directly to Social Security online and report payee fraud. They take that very seriously, and that's directly linked with them. That they can go in there and take that information and jump on that and go forward. So again, we're triage. We're going to look and help identify, and then we're going to try to link you up with the appropriate resource to help you moving forward to determine the kind of help that you really need for. Um, as far as there is one that I want to go back to, people knocking on the door, especially after storms. Sometimes they want you to pay for stuff up front and you'll promise to come back and don't. Another thing that we have seen a lot is people knocking on the door and insisting on payment for something that they've done, but was not authorized. For instance, had a lady after a storm open the door. These big burly guys were standing there. They had a small pile of twigs up to the street and said, "We cleaned up your yard for you after the storm. You now owe us money." Well, she's thinking, oh my gosh, I owe them money. They did something, but not thinking of, well, I didn't ask them to do that and I didn't hire them to do that. And she got scared and she's like, well, I don't have any money on me. I wasn't expecting this. Well, they offered to escort her to the bank and go on in there and help her get that money out. And not only did they do that once, they actually did that twice to her because she had dementia and couldn't remember that. Um, and it's not just the elderly. There was people, a young married man in my neighborhood that got swindled into getting some gravel to his driveway. Some guys drove by, said, "Hey, we got some extra gravel left over from a job. Do you want it?" He's like, "Well, how much would it cost? That sounds nice." And the guy said, "Well, let me come back with the gravel and I'll let you know." The guy went into the house, he came back out, and they were already spreading it in the driveway, and they told him, "You owe us $1,500. What? I wouldn't have bought that, is what the guy said. And he goes, "I don't have that kind of money." And they said, "Well, do you have a credit card? Do you have a bank? We'll escort you there and you can get a cash advance if you need to." And this guy, who's, pretty virile himself, was scared of the three guys towering over him, and that's what he did. So it's not just our elderly, the scammers that are out there, they're very skilled in what they do. Um, this is their job. Their job is to learn how to talk to people and get money from them. So when you call in, I know kind of going back and forth, and I apologize for that, but when you call in a report to Adult Protective Services and you meet the three criteria, we will, the case will be assigned to a social worker. And typically we have up to 72 hours to go out and initiate a case and about 45 days to do an assessment. So in that assessment, we're gathering as much information as possible. Is this going on? And, trying to look at the bank statements. Sometimes we have a hard time getting bank statements because we have to have that person's permission, because of the financial banking, private laws and stuff. Sometimes those people don't, they know that the grandson or the nephew or somebody else did that to them. They stole their credit card and they don't want to get them in trouble. They are not going to sign over to let us get those bank statements. They say it's done, it's over with, and that's that. And then they furthermore won't cooperate with police when police come in. So it just becomes very hard to do anything with those cases and individuals. And also on that, when we are looking at this, you know, we can look at and see that there's a power of attorney. That power of attorney gives that person a ton of different rights, and they're attached to the bank account, which gives them legal ownership to the money in there. But we can look at it and we have a loose definition that we can meet and say, well, there's only one source of income going into that account. And that income, from our perspective, is to be used for that person's need. Yes, POA, daughter, son, whoever you are, is on the account, but that is just and was meant for a helping measure. So that you could help this individual pay their bills and such. So in our terminology, we can possibly, most of the time, view that as exploitation, send our information off to the police and the DA. The police and DA look at it and said legally they had a power of attorney and they were on the account. We can't do anything with it. So that's some frustrations as well that we hit where, there's some discrepancies in the system. Understandable. Sometimes you need to give those power of attorneys all those types of rights so that they can work on your behalf, to the best of their benefit. But sometimes it's just a detriment to the situation if it gets put into the wrong hands. And it's really sad when that happens. A lot of times when family take the money, it's just lost money. There's no way of recouping that. The money spent, it's gone. Um, And again, most people do not want to get family in trouble. They will, you know, thousands of dollars later, I don't want anything to happen to my grandson. I don't want anything to happen to that. So, yeah, Catherine, I see you've got the question in there. There are a lot of people that do decline APS because they're embarrassed or that they don't want to get somebody in trouble. With regards to embarrassment, a lot of individuals who actually fall for some of the scams, ironically, are former doctors, attorneys, um, professionals, professors at universities, well educated people. And, they'll be the first to say, well, I'm a lawyer, or I'm a doctor, or I've got a PhD. I'm not stupid. I'm not going to fall for this. But these scams and these scammers, they're professionals too. They are professionals in what they do, and they have learned how to get you to fall for it. Regardless of how you did it, it happened. So sometimes it's, trying to uplift them and encourage them that no, they're not stupid. They just fell into a certain circumstance that was beyond their control and they got, taken advantage of. So working with the individual and trying to kind of build up their confidence, is a big part of that as well. And as far as their perception of, society is going to think they're stupid because they fell for this romance scam, anything like that. With regards when I'm out there and I'm talking with people in exploitation, besides trusting your gut, I try to hammer it home. If it comes to you by mail, if it comes to you by phone, or it comes to you by email, pop up, text, whatever, if it comes to you, it's probably not legit. If you're not actively seeking it out, then don't worry about it. The U.S. Postal Service sends these texts. You got an undeliverable package. Did you give the U.S. Postal Service your phone number? Most of us haven't. What do they normally do? They leave a sticker on your door saying, we were here, we couldn't deliver this. You got to kind of think out of the box. Not, oh, I ordered something off of Amazon. Maybe it's that. Click, click, click. And now they have full access to your computer. Um, Thinking about things like that and just trying to see the bigger picture of it. Um, Fake invoices, they come a lot too in the mail. Again, if you don't seek it out, if you're not seeking out somebody to cut down that tree, when they knock on your door, say no. If you're not seeking out an organization that you want to send money to, when you get all those requests through the mail, rip them up, put them in the shredder. Um, you know, Watch yourself. Don't fall for it. When you get a fake friend request on whatever social media platform you're on, just delete it. Don't even get into that. And again, as Sarah said, use your voicemails. Let your voicemail do the work for you. That's what it's for. And never call back a missed call number. Why? If they didn't leave a message, it wasn't important. Your doctor will leave a message. Your dentist will leave your message. Your pharmacy will leave you a message. If they didn't leave you a message, it's not important. I'm going to put the number to how to report um, a, exploitation in the box. I know it kind of gets very different when the individuals are in facilities. There's a lot of families that promise to pay and don't pay. First thing I can say about that is when somebody comes into your facility, if they get Social Security, get that rerouted to you. Don't wait 3 to 6 months and expect that somebody's going to send you that money afterwards. Try to get it as soon as possible before something goes awry. And, I've seen facilities that the person was there a year and a half and they weren't getting paid. Well, why did you let it get that far? Be diligent and vigilant and try to handle things as soon as they come up. And as I'm typing in the number, if you want to report any exploitation, you can call APS line directly. There's 6 of us that answer the call. We are all APS social workers who actually go out and do the job. And you don't actually have to call us just to report. If you have questions, if you want to say, hey, I've got this situation, what would you suggest? Or what are some resources for this? That's what we're there for. We're there to be a help to the community. We're not necessarily there to criticize and point out mistakes that people get into. So definitely call us and we can all work together and try to protect this population. Any questions?
Thank you, Mandy. And someone had asked me, just a reminder, Mandy works for the Forsyth County Department of
Yes.
Social Services. Again, if you are from a different county within our region or with anywhere within North Carolina, each county has an adult protected services team or person or half a person, depending on how small the county is, that does work within DSS to do this type of work.
Crystal, I just linked the statewide list in the chat.
Perfect. Yes. So thank you, Kim. So you can click on that link and find where your APS team may be housed within your own county. Mandy, I appreciate everything that you shared with us. That was, like Sarah, a lot of information. Does anyone have questions? We have plenty of time for Q&A. Of course, we can end early, which I'm sure won't disappoint any of you, but I want to make sure we answer all the questions you may have while we're here online. I had a question for you, Mandy. I think in the beginning you um, spoke about if a nephew took money, then you're not going to investigate that because I guess it was a one-time situation. Is that
So
what I heard you say? And I just
if
wondered
something
what
happened one time, yes. Let's say, well, they took money from her 3 months ago. Has anything happened since? Why did it stop? You changed the bank card? Okay. We're not going to pay attention to that. It's not an ongoing situation. It's not something that's going to be affecting this person going forward. If they've already canceled the card, the nephew's not around anymore, It's not an ongoing situation. That's fraud, by all means, yes. That becomes a police matter, and they can go and prosecute.
That's what I was gonna ask, is for those
Yes,
who still wanna do something, maybe APS is no longer the fit, where do they take those cases that feel like
yes.
something still needs to be
They would
done?
all go to the police, and the police do a really good job here in Forsyth County. We even have a task force every month that we talk about these exploitation cases and try to make things a little bit better for this population. The police, if somebody's been using that debit card and it gets identified, guess what? They're going to go get the video cameras. They're going to go get everything that they can. They'll get the cameras from the grocery store. They'll get the ATM cameras. They're going to do everything they can to gather that evidence. They have that ability to. We can only work kind of with the individual as much as they allow us, to some extent. It kind of gets a little bit difficult when dealing with finances. There are certain tools out there that can be utilized, freeze and inspect, but that is done very rarely. Um, on one hand, you don't want to freeze accounts when you have people's mortgages and things coming out there. It can
Or paying the
actually,
facility?
yeah, it can cause more harm than good, many, many times, especially if it's just an allegation and there's no concrete information that something is going on. Um, dealing with money is very, very uh, sticky sometimes.
Yeah, and that's one of the questions I was gonna ask you. As an ombudsman, I know that our team hears a lot about the gray area between staff and residents. So I'd love your take on when residents use some type of Cash App, Venmo, any of those money transaction apps to work with staff to purchase things on their behalf. We just it seems to be a slippery slope, but it's go get me some soda or snacks when you go to Walmart, but then it may be get yourself something or and leave some of this unfiltered access to the person's bank account. And residents, feel very in debt to staff at times. There's, an
Hmm.
unequal relationship. Um, but things can get out of hand quickly. I think when those type of relationships. So I wonder what would be your advice on best practices for maybe some facility administrators who might be on the call.
It is an extremely slippery slope, and you want to say across the board, just don't allow it. But it's going to happen, whether it's done in secrecy or anything like that. You're going to get somebody like, here, please give me a couple chocolate bars next time you're at the thing. So you can't really control everything. I would. And then you have residents that just don't keep cash on hand, and that's not a smart thing to do in a facility. If they were at home, I would say give them cash, get a receipt, and change. Don't give them their debit card, don't do this. If by some chance you do give them your debit card, you better check that statement. But if you're in a facility, you might not have access to internet, you don't know about online banking, you might not be getting your paper things. It's just a really hard thing to keep track of. Um, Cash apps and things, I don't think that they can like keep pulling money out of that, give them a specific amount of money. I don't know. I personally hate the technology and stuff. It's not something that's in my comfort level. And, you got somebody in a facility using Cash App. Half the time they don't know how to use it and somebody set it up on their phone for them. That's a red flag though. Like, oh, hey, let me help Cash App it to me and I'll go to the store for you.
Mhm.
Um,
I mean,
I'm
some
just
ways
very
it
leery.
does allow them direct access to their bank account in a way, but in other ways, it does allow an access that someone's probably not monitoring. See, I think the reason why it happens is facilities may not have an activities person or a person regularly going out and getting those. Obviously,
Right.
that would be the best thing, but they don't have that. So it's like if I'm craving these things and I know someone can get them for me, I'm willing. So that's the perspective I have. Janae wanted me to ask the question, if you feel someone is being exploited, do you report it to APS or the police first?
If you're not sure, give us a call. That's where we would go kind of snoop out the information and try to see. If you know for a fact that this person has their debit card, will not return it, X, Y, and Z, call the police, get them involved. The sooner they get involved, the sooner they can start getting those videotapes from the places. And we can work with them and look at what an ongoing need is. Does this person need a payee or whatever the case is? So it's there's no cookie cutter, 1, 2, 3 step with adult protective services. Every situation is so different. But if you know for a fact something is going on, call the police. Now, then you get the same people that say, oh, but it's my nephew and I don't want to get him in trouble. I just want him to stop. I just want him to stop, threatening me for money. I just want him to stop, getting me to hand over my keys to him. That gets very, very difficult because nobody can go there 24/7 and just stand there and be like, okay, you can't ask her for the keys anymore. So that person, it's encouraging them to stand up for themselves and say, no, nephew, I am not going to give you my debit card anymore, or I'm not going to do this. And that's really, really hard for people to do for people they love. Whether it be a parent, a grandparent, anybody. It's those strings and ties are thick. So
Mm,
all else fails, Janae, give us a call and we'll talk the situation through with you.
said thank you. Yeah, I feel like exploitation happens a lot in facilities that we see where facilities want them to stay, but the resident's family wants them to go home because that
Mhm.
income typically helps support the household. Is that exploitation? I mean, in our field, we always say people are allowed to make bad decisions. If they say they want to go home because their family's pressuring them, and I mean, but is it exploitation if that person, say, has a low competency and they really need to be cared for in the home? I mean, what do you do with that? Does the facility still report that if they feel like the person should not go home and the family's taking them home anyway?
It really would depend on the competency of that person and the conversation that the facility had with them. If the person says, I know they need my money to pay the bills, nobody else has income, but I want to go home. I want to do this. I know exactly what I'm going home to, and they have the ability to say that, then, regardless of whether we go in there and do an assessment for exploitation, it's probably going to be the same thing. Yes, they know they're there. Um, there are a lot of people that are living off of the elders' income in many different households. On the one hand, they're paying for everything, but there's this unwritten thing of, well, you go grocery shopping, bring food in the home, you're doing the cooking, and there's some level of care expected
Beneficial.
for
Mhm.
that. I'm letting you stay with me for free and you're going to help me out when I need it. And is it exploitation? Do they want that person there or do they want the person out?
Mhm.
I have had many people tell me that, I know what it is here. I know how I am treated here, regardless of whether or not I like it. I know what to expect here. If
Mhm.
I get rid of this person, I don't know how often I will see somebody, how often somebody will come by if I need them, or if I go to a facility, I might not ever see them again. So I'd rather keep this person close to me despite not liking everything that's going on, but they're family,
Yeah.
you know,
I don't want to be lonely and not have anyone come visit me or see
right?
me. Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
some will concretely vocalize that, you know. This is not the best situation, but otherwise I'm completely by myself and I'd rather live with what I know than what I don't know.
and sometimes I assume y'all get reports, and we do too, people that see that from the outside, and it makes them feel uncomfortable.
Hmm.
But just maybe people need to hear out loud that if the person's willing to do it, it's not an exploitation case that can truly be investigated and or reported to the police if the person's willingly going into the situation knowing that that's what they're choosing.
Right.
All right. You
Right.
can
And
just
that's
may
a
not
lot
like
with
it.
the same, and it's not a lot with the AMAs. They're leaving, they're going back to a not good environment, whether it be exploitation or lack of care. Um,
Mhm. Neglect.
if they know what's going on and they're continuing to choose that and they have that ability to, it just really makes it difficult because you don't have a good feeling about it, but it's their decision.
It's important to talk about. Well, Mandy, you've been very helpful, as Sarah, you also. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap up? We can close out early. You can get ready for your snow day or what have you. But I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It is being recorded, so at some point we will get that recording up on PTRC's YouTube page. If you want to watch it all over again or have someone that you feel would benefit from watching this, we would greatly appreciate it. Some of those links that were put in the chat also, maybe I'll try to put that in YouTube, but you can also email us and we get that information. Again, Mandy works for the Forsyth County Department of Social Services, Adult Protective Services, and Sarah Welsh works in outreach for the North Carolina Department of Justice. So you can find their information online as well. I hope this information was helpful, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.